Hello, this is Breadwild, and we are in the Canadian Rockies at a little airport, a little logging airport, I guess you'd call it, called Quatam River. I'm trying to avoid saying the N. It's Quatam. And this is a great little airport and scenery from Propstrike Studios. And we're going to be flying up to another airport by Propstrike Studio called Maxwell Fisheries. So what are we flying? This is the Quest Kodiak, an airplane developed by Thranda. It used to be part of Coronado. And this is a STOL aircraft, STOL, short takeoff and landing. The inspiration for buying this airplane is a missionary pilot in Papua New Guinea that I've been following on YouTube. He flies this airplane into incredibly remote airports, usually just patches of grass pasted on the side of a hill. And I thought, well, that looks like fun and very challenging. So I thought it would fit nicely with these airports from Propstrike Studios. Being the first video I've made with this aircraft, I thought I would go over some of the features and things that I like about it. A couple of things before we get started. I'm using the Reality extension pack from SimCoders. In fact, I haven't flown this plane without it. And it gives you these 5 icons over on the left. The first one is the checklist, which comes in handy because it is a little bit more immersive an aircraft than you would find with a typical Coronado, for instance. Convenient way to fill up the tanks. You can also do a walk around, check the flaps, ailerons, and release the tie downs. And if things aren't working, click on that little tool. For instance, the other day I couldn't get it started and one of these had turned red. So you click on it and it fixes it. And you can also just start the engine without doing it yourself. But what comes with it right off the shelf is this little pull-out that's got 6 different screens. The first one is probably the handiest. You can do things like, turn off reflections, start up the airplane running. You have a GPU that you can add to the lot. You can toggle the cargo pod that's underneath, and you can add fairings to the wheels, turn the lights on and off. But I use it mainly for killing the tie downs, removing the covers, and normally I don't do this, but you can also open all the doors. You can look into the engine compartment, cargo bay in the back. I wish I could get rid of this pilot. He's not nearly as good looking as the ones in Coronado. So let's close up these doors and we'll get rid of our GPU. You can change out the liveries right in this panel without going back to X-Plane. I'm using the Missionary aviation livery that this pilot in Papua New Guinea uses. Weight and balance comes in handy. This is particularly important down here, this total pounds, because that is used to set your takeoff torque, which we'll get to in a minute. I don't pay much attention to the camera because I have my own views. And if you want to mess with the audio, you can do that. And then you can change out the interior. So you can add cargo, and you get 2 different seating arrangements, passenger or executive. And you can add skis. I don't know what tires does. Oh, bigger tires. So that covers that little pull-out panel. So let's jump inside. So I've got several different views set. This is one that I use most commonly because I have a good view of my PFD, which also pops out, and your Garmin 1000 that this aircraft comes with. And it's the same one that comes with any laminar aircraft with the G1000. Then I can step back a little bit, get a broader view, a good view of the switches I've got my yoke hidden for right now. Fuel up above, and then the executive seating in the back here. I also have a setting for my quadrant, throttle quadrant here. It's kind of hard to see these knobs, they get tucked behind each other. So that covers our tour of the cockpit. So I've taken the liberty to move the airplane to another place here at Quatam River. By the way, this scenery is very interesting because even though there's some activity over here with some sort of logging apparatus, it feels like the old Mist or Riven games where you feel like you're being watched but you never see anybody. And there is some movement in the trees. I don't know if you can see that, but a slight breeze. So again, we're going to go up to Mockmel Fisheries, and here's a map. Not a lot of landmarks, just valleys and lakes and inlets. So we're down here in the lower right, and we're flying up to Mockmel Fisheries, and we'll be flying northwest at 300 degrees. Depending on the wind, there's 15 degrees from the southeast, so we'll kind of gauge our bearing as we go and make adjustments. It won't be a straight line at the end. We're going to drop down into this valley so we can begin our descent, because we're almost zero altitude for our runway. All right, let's get started. Fuel on. We'll hide our yoke. Master on, avionics on. I need these gauges here. Fuel flow, fuel pump, on. We do not turn on the ignition when our starter is going to be in the high position. Beacon on. Make sure my condition lever and prop is back. Flaps 0. So everything looks good for starting. And you can see this NG moving up. And when it gets to 14%, we'll add fuel. And prop all the way forward for takeoff. We're going to leave our fuel pump in standby, generator, alternator, auxiliary bus, strobe, nav lights. Don't need taxi. Landing light. Don't expect to see a lot of people out here. And let's check our weight. It is 5,100, almost 52. And we are at 0 degrees centigrade, 400 feet elevation. So we use this chart here to plot our torque for takeoff, and it's going to be 1790. So we'll take off into this box canyon, we'll make a 180 and then begin our route. So here, let me zoom in. So here's our little canyon, and we'll take off and then head in this direction. So condition lever all the way up. And throttle. Increase our torque to 1790 and release the brakes. Rotate. And we'll set up for our turn. So our prop is at 2200 RPM. I'm going to pull it back to 2000. Back over the airport. Begin turning towards our course. Set my altitude at 11.5. Well, it's not going to let me. So we're going to be at 11.6. And I've got my heading bug set to 305 to compensate for that wind. So I will engage our autopilot, vertical speed, and heading. If you followed my videos for any length of time, I've used this scenery before and made a flight from the opposite direction from Mockmel Fisheries down to Quatam. Now there's a valley over here that's got a little logging runway. That's a challenge to land on, but it's kind of an Easter egg for this software. I just happened to be flying over it and saw it, and I thought, well, I'll check that out, but it's actually got some moving vehicles. So we're headed up to, should be 11.5, but oh, maybe it'll let me do it now. Okay, there we go. Now we're totally legal. So let's take a look at our route. So we've got this valley here. This is where that runway is, and we want to just cut between these two valleys over this ridge. So here's the ridge, the two valleys. That runway is right here. Yeah, you can see it here. There's a waterfall here on the end. But yeah, it's a real tricky landing because there's trees all around, and you really have to descend quickly. You're basically stalling all the way down. So this is showing us right on target. So this is the extension of that valley. Which is right here. So we are aiming just to cut off the right side of that. You can see that runway here, or patch of dirt. Having problems with ScreenFlow, the program I use to record these. It's not picking up sounds from the computer, so it's just my microphone picking up the speakers. So a little harder to control, so I apologize. So again, we want to just be just to the right of this. We've got a lake down here under the right wing. So I'm looking for a couple of lakes here. We've got one here, and there should be one behind this ridge. And then we have a valley here we want to check our relationship to. So here are those two lakes I was telling you about in that valley. So we might need to adjust our route just a little bit. We'll try, let's see, this is 301, 300. So here are those two lakes that you could see. Then we'll be a bit to the right of this, I guess you would call it an inlet, and then we just want to clip the north side of this small lake before we go out over this larger inlet. I'm going to be looking at the relationship to this point and this curve in the inlet, in the shoreline. So here's that smaller inlet. And the next thing we want to look for is that small lake. And this lake is coming into view. So it looks like we're going to just clip the north side of it. Two little lakes below us. I don't know if those will show up on the map. So we're right here. And we've got this lake here we want to be just to the right of. I believe that's this one here. So our bearing of 302 seems to be compensating a little bit for that wind. Now we've got some larger mountains off in the distance. So let's see, yep, up to 14,000. So the highest we're going to have to deal with is 10.7. See how we're doing here. Okay, here's that one lake. Just want to clip the right of it, and here's that point. We need to be a little bit more to the left, so I'll make an adjustment, small adjustment. Yeah, we want to fly right along this ridge just to the right of this valley. You can see that right here. The lake we fly right over. I think it's off in the distance here. Well, I think you get the general idea. Lots of mountains and valleys, so why don't you join me in a bit as we get a little bit closer to our destination. So here's another check-in. We'll have one more before we begin our descent. But there is a valley here. Let me show you what I'm looking for. So this is the valley that we're flying over. And there's kind of this U-shaped valley and a couple of lakes here. So I've got lakes just behind that ridge, and here is this valley that opens up into this U-shaped. So that's right here. So we've got a lake down here, one just off to our right, or excuse me, left. You can see that lake right here. And that lake down in the valley. So we're right on target. So we're at the end of this one valley, and then there's this kind of sloping, I don't know, glacier. And we're probably looking for this valley off in the distance. So this is that, what I call the glacier, the end of this valley. And when I see these lakes, I'm gonna look for this canyon that drops down into the valley, and I want to have a rather aggressive descent, being at 11.5. You definitely want to make it into this airport before the sun goes down. There's no lighting. There's also no RNAV or ILS approach. It's just seat of the pants. Mountains, valleys, and rivers as far as you can see. Here are the lakes. Right here. So we'll fly over this ridge and then drop down. That's the plan, at least. So we'll bear off to the right. Set my altitude 1,000 feet. Autopilot off. Back on the throttle. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. Slow down my rate of descent. Increase my power. The runway, as it were, runs east-west. So basically we're on a long downwind. Notch of flaps. Watch my speed here. Basically flying a downwind. Second notch of flaps. Runway off to the right. Pay attention. I want to cut a little wider berth here on my kind of unusual base leg. Watch my speed. So I'm going to land a little bit further down. It's a little wider and I just hope I can control this thing. Really drag it in. I love the mist over the trees. So all 3 notches of flaps, just dragging it in. Try to keep it in the dirt. Oh, they almost ate a log. So let's go park this and take a look at the rest of the scenery. A lot of dust. So I'm just using the condition lever to control my speed, but it is rocky. Very squirrely. Old boat. Well, this looks like a good place to park it. So back on our condition lever, fuel off, and prop back. Got to put my flaps up. All right, lights off. Fuel pump off, bus off, avionics off, fuel off. And finally, master. I did put the big tires on. So we can open things up here. Whoops. Tie downs, open everything up. We can also open the cargo pod doors. So that's our flight, first flight in the Quest Kodiak by Thranda, flying from Quatam River to Mockmel Fisheries, 2 great airports created by Propstrike Studios. Check the comments below for any links. So this is Breadwild. Until next time.